Partnership Grants Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you'd like to comment during the meeting, please type "I have a comment" or "I have a question" in the chat, and a message will be sent to the host. Alternatively, you can also use the raise hand feature. In efforts of transparency for all those joining this public meeting, we request that you refrain from having side conversations on chat about the content of the meeting. Again, the chat feature is utilized simply as a tool for you to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. Going forward, all Trust Fund Commission meetings and committee meetings will be recorded and posted on the State Bar website. Friendly reminder that this is a video conference, and please be aware of your surroundings behind you. Just a few troubleshooting tips. For those using Zoom on a computer, when on mute, holding down the space bar will temporarily unmute. If you use your phone to dial into this meeting, please be sure your computer's microphone is on mute to avoid audio feedback issues. And while joining audio via computer is highly recommended, if an individual loses audio, they can call in separately using the Zoom conference number.
Thank you. And can you take roll, please, Crystal?
Sure. Christina Vanarelli.
Here.
Kim Bartleson. Will Bichelli.
Here.
Eric Iskin. Deborah Myers.
Here.
Chris Schreiber.
Here.
Go to our advisors. Judge Jaskol. Justice Murray. Let's see, is Bonnie Huff on the call? All right. State Bar staff. I'm here. Erica Carroll.
Here.
Elizabeth Hom.
Here.
Andrea Fatanides.
Here.
Great. Oh, and then Dan's on the call as well.
All right. I don't know if the other committee members noticed, but we have a new committee member who is actually coming back. His name is Eric Iskin. Hopefully he'll pop in on the call today, but we want to welcome him back to the Partnership Grants Committee. Call for public comment. I understand that there's at least one member of the public out there who would like to speak at today's meeting. If so, could you please identify yourself?
Hi, this is Kirsten Voiles from Legal Assistance for Seniors.
Hi, Kirsten. I understand that you wanted to make comments concerning the 2020 budget revisions and carryover requests. Is that right?
Yes, I understood there might have been some questions about our partnership grant. So
Okay.
I am here and our CFO is attempting to log on in case you all have questions for us that we can answer.
Excellent. All right. We actually have that item on our agenda. Could we trouble you to just hang out at this meeting for just a few minutes until we get to that item?
Sure.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to identify themselves?
Stephanie Hafner did raise her hand.
Yeah.
Who?
Stephanie Hafner is.
Stephanie Hafner.
Yeah, hi, Stephanie Hafner with Legal Aid of Marin. Also here because I'm informed that our carryover application is being considered. So I'm here in case there might be questions.
Oh, excellent. And can you wait on the call until we get to that agenda item as well?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to identify themselves?
There's a Lenora Berlander and a Shelby Knox.
Okay, well, they're not required to speak up, but they're certainly welcome to.
Shelby Knox is from CLA SoCal and Lenore is from LAS. So probably similar reasons as well for the budget revisions and carryover requests.
Okay.
I forgot. Yeah.
Okay. Hearing no other people popping up to speak, let's go to the next agenda item, which is the item 3, consent to approve the meeting summary and action items for November 13, 2020. Does anybody have any comments on those minutes? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the meeting summary and action items?
Sure, motion to approve.
Okay, thanks, Will.
What?
Do we have a second? Okay, well, I will second in that case. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Did it again. I did it again. Let's have a roll call vote, Crystal, please.
Sure. Vanarelli,
Yes.
Bartleson, Michele,
Yes.
Iskin, Myers,
Abstain. I wasn't present at the meeting.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Great. Let's see. Kim, I got a notice from Eric Iskin that I think he's trying to join the call, or he might be phoned in. Let's see.
I just saw a chat note from someone entitled Ready saying, I voted. Did you hear me?
No.
So I just promoted Reddy, who may be
I think it's Eric.
Eric. Are you ready?
Sorry.
Nope. No.
Ever.
All right.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I did a phone bank for the Georgia Senate race, and they wanted me to change my name to Ready to move me to a room. So I'll undo that. Sorry.
No better reason.
All right, so that motion passed?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so now we're on to item 4, the review and approval of the 2020 budget revisions and carryover request, and Crystal's going to talk about that.
Sure. So this is agenda item 4A. There was an attachment on the posted meeting agenda. Slightly hard to read, but that's kind of our typical format with the percentage of the carryover budget revision requested. As a reminder on the screen, this was just the motion that was approved by both the committee and the commission permitting the budget revisions under carryover request for 2020. And just a summary of the requests received, all in all, we received 14 requests, 11 need committee approval today. And just to note, of that 11, 4 had the staff recommendation to approve. They're between 26 to 49%, 7 were deferred to committee, 50% or higher, and the remaining 3 were approved, automatically approved by staff because we do have authority to approve requests up to 25%. I also wanted to include, in addition to what was posted on the meeting materials, there was an additional budget revision that was submitted after the 20th from CLA SoCal regarding their workshop at the Norwalk Superior Court. This is their explanation for your reference as well, because it's 50% staff recommendation is to approve. So I know we have several members of the public from these organizations on the line. I just wanted to open it up to see if the committee members had any questions regarding those larger requests that have been set to defer to committee status.
I had a question. So I don't really oppose any of this, but for the larger requests, the effect of that will be that their 2021 dollars will be substantially higher than they ordinarily would be. Are we expecting that they will, and what if they can't spend all this money in 2021? Are we going to similarly be looking with favor on carryover requests at this time next year? Or, what are we going to do about that? And do we want to, we had a similar question in the eligibility and budget review committee when we had similar kind of carryovers, and we decided to be pretty liberal there about approving them. But we also decided that sometime early in 2021, we were going to make a decision and communicate to the public our intent to handle carryovers next year. So anyway, hopefully that comment made some sense. What are we at 2021 basically?
This issue has been of concern in the past, which is one of the reasons why carryovers haven't traditionally been liberally provided in a partnership context. But the information that we got this year from surveys and from the field generally was that there's an expectation that all of the savings this year are going to be expended next year when the tidal wave hits, when everything that didn't happen starts happening. It's going to cost more to provide services, and a lot more services are going to be needed than typically. So I think that the idea, the approach is to provide that cushion for now, and then to take our lead from that meeting we have in January to find out when whether there's going to be a need for continued liberal flexibility or some other approach.
Do we have a meeting scheduled in early next year of this committee?
Not of this committee yet, but I'm thinking that when the full commission talks about this, that's going to kind of set a tone that we want to at least recognize.
So I'm just putting the motion again. It just was specific to 2020. It's kind of hard to foresee like if this will be carried over into the 2021 process. I think what we're aware of is if approved, they will be approved to spend on the funds for the next 12 months. As for re-extending this for 2021, I don't think we've like began that conversation yet as well, and we need to coordinate with Judicial Council, you know, and as well as what the other committees such as eligibility and budget review and their stance on this is. So I can only speak to like what we've talked about. And I think what was approved, but kind of seeing moving forward, we're not quite at that point, and maybe the committee can revisit this at a future meeting. So yeah.
Are there any other comments? Any strong feelings about? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had some questions. On the carryover funds, I think the census we're going to vote for yay on all of them, but where does that money go if it gets returned? For example, what you had up on screen previously, I think was the Norwalk from Community Legal Aid SoCal doing a 50% budget reduction request, which is frankly confusing. I think this was a grant that I reviewed, and it seemed like it was an important service that could be provided online. So, but first, where does that money go?
Our reserves, our partnership grant reserves.
Okay, so it's still going to be for partnership grants.
Yeah,
going
and it will
forward.
be redistributed next cycle.
Okay, excellent. How usual is this reduction request?
So this one, I believe Shelby's on the line too, if she can speak more about it. But this was CLA SoCal. This was the 2020 project in which this project, I think, had a delay with submitting their MOU, so they haven't received the funds yet. And looking into what they could actually spend, because I believe there is a project for 2021. This was what they estimated, so they're seeking a reduction. So we had them submit a budget revision just to kind of estimate what those expenses would.
And to answer your question, well, typically we don't get a lot of requests to reduce grant awards, but obviously this is an atypical year, so we're entertaining all sorts of requests we don't normally do.
Certainly, and the one that I flagged, I was really curious how they are doing a 99% carryover, the Central California Legal Services. What happened there? Do we know anymore?
Is that a question for Shelby? Should
CCLS
Central California.
is Mark. I don't believe he's.
Oh, I don't see. Okay. Sorry, I was looking at the screen.
Sorry, yeah, I changed the topic there to the Tulare County Unlawful Detainer Workshop by Central California Legal Services, and they're requesting the 99% carryover. And I'm just curious, did they have trouble getting it started before the pandemic took off and shut down the court services? Is there any concern there? I guess I have some concern that 99% is.
UDs were essentially shut down, and they kind of still are. So I think it's not unreasonable to expect them to be a flood of them next year.
Oh, I think that's totally reasonable. It was just the January, February, March of 2020, why those didn't get expended at all. If there was some sort of program problem, the court not being supportive or something else of concern there.
I'm not sure that that was an ongoing project. Was that its first year, 2020?
Yes, it was,
think
as I
so.
read it, it was a
Yeah.
new project.
Yeah,
So-
so it's often difficult to do the startup and to ramp up something, especially when you're moving into a county that doesn't have experience, as Tulare does not, with having an in-house private self-help component. So I'm not surprised that this didn't take off in the first 3 months, and I'm certainly not surprised that it didn't do much business in the following months.
Okay. I guess as long as we're monitoring it, I feel comfortable.
This was actually a project that the Tulare court reached out to CCLS and asked them to propose. This wasn't something that was imposed on the court. The court asked for this. So I think that this is not as bad a sign as it looks, I hope.
Okay. I guess we don't have any more information on it then.
Other than what was provided, no. But if the committee would like some additional information after this meeting, that's also a possibility if there's some supplemental information. I did just want to, for the next slide, just some additional considerations as to like how to treat this 2020 grant year. We did share this list and chart with Bonnie earlier. Like in terms of treating it, because it was such an atypical year, should this be kind of like a waiver year towards that 5-year period that the committee usually looks at these grants? Would the committee consider any maybe cap percentages? Just a reminder that cap percentages weren't done for the eligibility and budget review committee, so I don't know if we're seeking parity in terms of how these requests are treated, but just some other considerations as well. So.
Okay.
And Will Shelby from CLA SoCal is on the line. I don't know if you wanted to ask any additional questions or if that response was sufficient about their request that was on the prior screen.
Yeah, I think it was sufficient. I'm trusting that the staff has a better feel for how these organizations are proceeding. There are so many variables here, and for us to really truly understand the contingencies that they're dealing with, I think that's a fool's errand. So I'm going to lean in favor of trusting the agencies, though on big numbers, I worry that we're holding money back that could go into the pot for next year. But it's at this point, I don't think it's enough of a concern to hold up approving the carryover requests, at least from my perspective.
Just to follow up on that, again, I could agree with Will, but I'm just curious, so these are mostly clinics that are operating at the courthouse, right?
Yes.
And because the courthouses have been largely shut down, a lot of these clinics have been shut down. Are these clinics, do people know, are they shifting to more of an online mode as opposed to, I mean, is that the plan for, do we know, like for 2021, that instead of making people come to a courthouse, are they making their services available on Zoom or something like that?
The remote services, yeah, that appears to be like an ongoing trend.
We actually did a survey last year, just a month or so after the pandemic hit, to find out how projects were adjusting, and checked in again after the application process to see if they needed to make any budget revisions or adjustments based on their experience. Everybody seems to think that what they're doing can mostly be done as remotely as anything else can be done, but they're looking forward to moving back to the courts. So it's kind of a running theme that when we can get back to doing it in person, we will. Until then, some organizations have been very creative in developing virtual ways of working around this, conference rooms and meeting rooms and things right in the courthouse. Others are still building those ways of working around it because their work is more intensively personal. There's a wide range.
And to follow up on that, the community court programs, the courts are still meeting over video or phone? Because I think Legal Aid Marin, for example, they do a community court, and it wasn't held at the courthouse, but I don't know if they're still able to have those.
Stephanie.
So Stephanie, raised her hand.
Yeah, if you'd like me to address it, I can.
I would love it.
Yeah, the community court program is taking place remotely. It is at a lower volume because the demand is lower right now for a variety of reasons. People having more immediate needs, as well as some of the factors that send people into the court are reduced right now because of the pandemic. But yes, we are doing it remotely. I think it's court by court, according to the court's priorities, whether a remote court is happening at all. But our court took a 2-month pause and then resumed remotely.
If there's any additional questions, I'm going to just put the proposed motion on the screen for the committee's consideration.
And Crystal, one of the other slides said there's 14, but there's 13. Is that correct? As on the chart?
Yeah, on the chart is 13, but the 14th was CLA SoCal's with that budget revision on the screen, which is why it was a separate slide.
Okay.
Yeah, I would first thank you, Stephanie. I'm glad the courts are still meeting, and I am glad to motion for the Partnership Grants Committee recommend approval of the 2020 Partnership Grant Budget Revisions and Carryover Requests.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Deborah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion before we do a roll call vote? All right. Crystal, could you do that roll call vote?
Sure. Vanarelli?
Yes.
Bartleson? Bichelli?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Yes.
Iskin?
Yes.
Great. Motion passes.
Great. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Members of the public and anybody else on the call, you're welcome to stay and enjoy the rest of the meeting if you'd like. But Crystal's going to give us an update on the rubric project that we discussed last time.
Great. Thanks, Rosina. All right. So very similar to what we talked about a few weeks ago. We did make revisions to the updates to the memo, which was posted under item 4B on the agenda. This is kind of just a bird's eye view of what that updated rubric entails, taking consideration what the committee offered us suggestions. We also did some additional research looking at existing rubrics with LSC and other state government funded grants for some parity and some similarities, as well as feedback from our own HP rubric as well. So that it's slightly revised, but fairly similar. As you can see, eligibility requirements are still a yes, no, and then kind of a 2 to 3 part, depending how you look on it, selection criteria and funding priorities as separate categories, and optional per Justice Murray's suggestion, offering additional points for particularly innovative projects on the screen. So I just wanted to see if there were any questions. We kind of fleshed it out a little bit more after initial discussion. And in addition, another suggestion during the meeting was to offer some suggestions, because we did have a 3-prong of exceeding expectations, meet expectations, and below expectations. These are pulled almost directly from LSC's own definitions, and we've reformatted them slightly as well, just to kind of give some parameters as the committee members are reviewing proposals and proposals for 2022. So again, a reminder, this would just be for the 2022 partnership grant administration. We will be revisiting policies and changes like that in the codification process, and possibly potentially like changing or updating this rubric, but this is for 2022 to provide some framework, and also just to see kind of how it goes, so we can improve it for future grant years.
If you look at Crystal's excellent memorandum dated December 1st, starting on page 6, it shows sort of a sample worksheet and how the calculations would be done. I found that pretty helpful. We had some pretty robust discussion about this last meeting. So what comments does everybody have today? Justice Murray?
Hi, Crystal. Great job on this. Did we try to test drive this on any existing projects to see how it would plug in?
Thank you for asking, Justice Murray. So what we're seeking today is to get approval kind of for the rubric in concept. And so because of the turnaround with the time from our last meeting and this meeting, like we didn't have time to test drive. I like that phrase actually. So we would be seeking maybe 2 to 3 volunteers to kind of do that sample that you brought up last time to test out and to validate the scoring. So there's flexibility to change the scoring if it doesn't turn out kind of how, we can calibrate basically and change and update it.
So are you looking for a commission member volunteers to do that? I mean, I would be willing to volunteer if you are. I mean, I'm new to this, so you guys have thought about this a lot, I'm sure. So forgive me for asking this question, but I was just trying to visualize like how this works. I mean, I can visualize like a guardianship clinic, for example, that I've participated in at the LA Courthouse, LA Law Library with Bates Fedek. They staff it with a couple of attorneys and a staff person, and they meet once a week and blah, 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 blah. So if we were to get that proposal, along with other similar proposals, I was trying to envision how we would figure out whether it exceeds expectations or meets expectations. I mean, can somebody kind of is it possible just briefly to talk through how we might do that? I'm having trouble visualizing how that would work.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's one reason why it's important to test drive this. And just in the abstract, I was having the same problem Eric is, and I've been at this for a while. So I wonder if we might end up grading the quality of the application as opposed to the quality of the project. Yeah, especially in making determinations between exceeds and meets expectations. I think that, doesn't meet expectations. That's a clear category, but the other two seem to be a little bit more squishy to me.
And Justice Murray, I think that's why I think we want to do the test driving to I think it's part of the calibration. We did it for the HPE RFP. We, all the committee members we all reviewed one application, and then we all got together to calibrate to make sure that we were, looking at issues like you brought up, that we're not grading the quality of the application, but actually the quality of the services that are being proposed.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry. Every committee member in that instance reviewed the same application?
So so for EAF HP, we didn't have this process where we're kind of going to try to review old applications to calibrate. When we received all the new applications, every committee member and every staff person, we all reviewed one application together and discussed it in each working group to calibrate, to make sure that we were, kind of highlighting the issues and scoring kind of similarly, so that, somebody who's, a tough grader wouldn't, impact the applications that they were reviewing.
Okay, but here, since we have a pool to get a sample of, we can do it that way, right?
Yes.
I'll review a few of them and see if they come out
Definitely.
the same.
And I think, even when we get the new applications in the new year, next March, I think, we can also do a similar exercise with everybody reviewing one application and going through that exercise to just make sure that we really are calibrating and, scoring equitably. And I think Chris has his hand up.
So I guess the one lesson that it seemed like we learned in the HP rubric was the problems that can arise when you have a huge category. So I guess the thing that jumps out at me is like, and am I reading it right? There's 105 possible points, or sorry, 115.
That's right.
So, I mean, basically like things are sort of made or broken in the 80-point category.
And the 80-point category has a lot of different subcategories.
Yeah, so do you mind I don't know if you can put that onto the screen.
Do you have the memo that you could just share?
I do, yeah.
Or
so I guess
Crystal, do you have the memo to share?
Yeah, let me pull it up. Sorry.
And really one of my questions was just on that second screen of the meets exceeds below, like, is that an effort to do what we've been sort of doing informally, which is to say like trying to group these things into priority sort of cat boxes almost, or tiers?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this what you were referring to, Chris?
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to I guess ask on this grouping for the 80 points, is one of the issues that we came across was whether we were expected to be grading things sort of on a curve, or whether these were sort of objective, like in other words, everybody could get 80 potentially, or should sort of only the top program get 80 points for this category and then sort of work down from there so that we end up with a little bit of a bell curve. Because I think like one issue that we have confronted in this committee over the years, and I'm looking at like court involvement, and I'd invite Justice Murray or even Bonnie or Dan or like people who've been on our committee, and we've talked about this, our subcommittee. But like, it's hard, like you get a letter from the court, it's often drafted by the program, it seems like, or it's sort of a pro forma letter and they sort of check the box, which we've, I guess, sort of forgiven in the sense because we know that the court is busy and that's a sort of a tough ask at times, and some courts are just more responsive than others. So, you know, I guess I don't know what that would look like in the rubric if we're like, how do you exceed an expectation of the court's involvement versus if they've gotten the letter, how would we apply this rubric in the various kinds of scenarios? What's sort of the thinking there?
I mean, one thought is, you know, if they just got the letter, that would meet expectations. But if it's clear in the application that, you know, the court requested these services, or the court has been really involved in planning and promoting and really working together with the QLSP to implement this project, then that seems to be exceeds. I mean, just kind of talking abstractly.
Yeah, and then so then what's the number that attaches to those two scenarios?
Crystal, can you scroll? Yes. So I think there's a little bit of discretion for committee members to assign a number. Is that right, Crystal?
So for selection, it's actually, they check mark the box and then multiply it by the multiplier.
Is it just one check mark?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to add, like at the end of this too, just because for consistency and for overall flow, like we'll provide information about this new rubric in the RFP, and also take a look at the existing application just for flow. And if these questions need to be more explicit to help the committee members review the application and make those determinations, I think like it has to be kind of all consistent around, because I think the current application doesn't necessarily support this rubric, so we'll have to make adjustments on our end, which staff will do before the release.
Yeah, I guess one recommendation I guess I'd make is, given the sort of breadth of knowledge that staff has on this, it would probably be helpful, maybe rather or in addition to, and I certainly am not trying to ladle on more work here, but it would be helpful in these categories to give exemplars of what staff believes would fit into each. I mean, over the years, like it might be sort of a Frankenstein application or Frankenstein of like, this is a court letter that would exceed, this is an example of a court letter that meets, because I think that would be helpful during the process. Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Appreciate it.
I think that's a great suggestion, and similar to like what the bar exam does with their grading, like there are samples of like what this looks like. So hopefully from the test driving, we'll be able to identify some, for example, so there'll be kind of a packet to assist the committee members in applying the rubric and looking at some examples. So yeah, similar thinking, Chris.
So Will has a question.
Yes, just want to understand, by approving, how locked into the rubric as it exists now will we be? Will we be able to make changes? Could we have a working group get together, or after the test drive, make substantive modifications before applying it next year? And along the same lines, when would you expect to conduct the test drive session?
It's a pretty tight turnaround. So the commission ultimately has to approve it in their meeting on the 15th. So what we're seeking is the committee recommending approval for that commission meeting on the 15th and before the application release. So I don't know in terms of like substantive.
So it couldn't change after that?
Like descriptions could change and like points could change, but like it's in concept, but like to rework the whole thing by the 15th without like the committee's input at this point, I think it might be I don't know if we'll
So
have
we can make adjustments based on the test driving, but I think changing things significantly probably would not be possible given our time frame. Does that make sense?
Right. I just want to understand how locked in we are, because I think this is a really excellent start. I like where it's going, but I don't know that it quite meets what I imagine for transparency and equity and clarity for all the grant members. I feel like there's a lot of ambiguity for me as I read through it. If I was trying to construct the grant application, I'd be like, well, what do you mean innovative? And I think that can be filled out a little more, but if we don't all have the same concept of what's the innovative, what's meets or exceeds expectations.
Right, and we'll just before the HP RFP process, we had the working groups and the team had kind of the same questions. What does innovative mean? And it kind of means something different to everybody. So I think those are discussions that we can try to have as we're test driving, but we'll also have again when we're reviewing the applications for 2022 in our calibration with kind of the new set of applications that we'll be reviewing.
One thing I want to raise from my conversations with Professor Meeker, who was on my working group for the HP RFP grants and brings a lot of experience to looking at rubrics, was that he says that these are always helpful, but they're always, they get better the more you use them. So the first time you make one, you'll see a lot of things to fix the next time, and every time it gets better. So I think we're on the right track to try to make this as good as it can be. But it's never going to be perfect. We're always going to want to make it better next year, and apparently that's to be expected.
And actually, that's kind of our process with trying to implement a rubric for this next grant cycle, so that we will have information to really improve and revise and tinker with for the codification process.
And just to be clear, after we score a bunch of these things for next cycle, the committee and the commission still retains discretion, right? You don't just have to take the top 25.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So that's helpful.
Although we probably want to be able to explain why.
Sure.
I guess it sounds like with the tight turnaround and the test drive, there's not a lot we can do. So I'm not sure it's going to be a useful for us to spend the time to go through all of the concerns that I flagged while I read through this. And I understand that it won't be perfect, and I would not expect it to be. But I think there's some, high level questions like on the eligibility requirements, for example. I think the ambiguity around at or near the courthouse, that requirement, or that self-represented litigants. These are threshold eligibility requirements. And as it's stated, I would read them pretty restrictively. But what we actually mean is not that restrictive. We allow Legal Aid Marin to have community court, not at the courthouse or near it, but we qualify it by saying, if you can get a judge and hold court session there, then it's a court, which is great. I love that. But if we're talking about transparency and equity, then it needs to be clear to applicants that that's our definition, and not that it has to be in the physical building that most of us understand to be a courthouse. The same with self-represented litigants. If we're saying, as long as you don't appear on a record before the court and you're not, that basically that was the only requirement I saw, that they can actually stand there, they can speak for the judge in the community, or speak to the judge on behalf of their client in the community court, and they can establish attorney-client privilege, which all, to me at least, as I read it initially, go, that's not what I imagine self-represented litigant to be. And so that's sort of ambiguity there. And then there are a couple other places where I think it could disadvantage applicants, especially new applicants, when they read it and they're like, oh, I don't qualify, I'm not doing this, or my piece isn't there. It's probably a small subset. I don't know how many people would self-disqualify themselves, but it's still a concern if we want this to be an improvement and achieve the goals that were stated at the beginning of the memo. Discuss. Thank you.
I think a lot of these points are longstanding concerns that might best be addressed not in the scoring rubric, but in the underlying materials, guidelines or something else, so that everybody, when they open up the package to begin with, understands what we're looking at, rather than just having these be understood through the scoring rubric by ourselves. This is not the first time the questions have come up. They've been really hard to answer. But I don't know that we're going to want to put the answer here in the rubric, because this isn't the place where it's going to reach the most people and do the most good.
So Dan, I agree with that. And I guess, one thing that occurs to me, I'm sorry if I'm jumping the queue here, but, our greatest advantage in this whole process has always been, and I believe remains, having effective and open lines of communication with these two communities. By that, I mean the community of the court through judicial council and through Bonnie. And I think, that remains an important priority, and it doesn't change with the application of this or development of this rubric. And the second is the legal aid service provider community through LAC and through the, provision of, or the communication of information from the commission or from the staff through LAC, in order to, make sure there isn't any misunderstanding or self-censorship. And so I guess I, ultimately believe that whether we institute this and it looks, this way or that way, those things remain essential and are really the primary sort of battle lines here in terms of transparency and participation.
Chris, that's a really good point. I know last meeting, Bonnie had some really great ideas about some outreach that we would do, especially to more rural courts and legal services providers. So I think, with the feedback we've gotten today, we can do some additional outreach. I know LAC does informal outreach on our behalf on this, and so we can maybe be more formal in our outreach moving forward on this. And, it might make sense that we hold like a really brief webinar on, how the new rubric impacts grant applications for 2022. And so, I think, all of your comments are really helpful, and we definitely want to be transparent. I mean, that's the point of trying to formalize the review process and provide some written documentation of how decisions are being made. And so maybe it is a more formal outreach webinar so that everybody who wants to apply is on the same page and has the same information as somebody who's applied for the last 10 years. So I think that's something we could build in.
So this is Deborah. I just want to say, having submitted a number of these partnership applications over the years, I think this is a big improvement. That's not to say that it's perfect. I agree with a lot of Will's comments. I think a test drive is a great idea too. I think a webinar is an excellent idea, because as an applicant, you often sit there wondering, what does this mean? What does that mean? But I also agree, for the time being, we need to move forward. So maybe we can move forward and at the same time, look at these other issues.
Yeah, I'm prepared to move forward as well. But I am curious to know what the plan is for the test drive process.
So we have Eric who volunteered. Are there any other commission members who'd like to volunteer?
So Elizabeth, what's the timeline here?
Crystal has a better sense of that.
I'll be reaching out later this week, actually, with a subset. I think about, we'll do about like 5 to 10. I'll firm up with Elizabeth of the approval, the grants that were approved for 2020, and then send them out, and then you'll apply the rubric. So there'll be some supplemental information. I think we'll have you have it, maybe get it back by early next week, just so we can make any changes. So it'll be pretty tight. Posting deadline is 10 days prior to the meeting, so you just want to be mindful of that.
No, I would love to participate in this, but I just can't on this short notice, given what I have to do this in this month.
Well, do we need to do the test drive before the commission meeting?
I mean, it would be helpful if you wanted to change the weighting. But we could also do the calibration session after, test driving after and maybe ask the commission to approve in concept with additional kind of minor changes after the test driving is complete.
Can we do that? Because even for those folks who can participate in this truncated period, I don't know that we're going to get the most valid sort of results from the test drive. That we might get more valid results or more information if we had a longer period of time to do that.
Okay, so I think we'll still need to do this in December, because we are planning to release the applications in January, and we want to have all the information available to applicants. The other thought, asking the commission to, approve in concept with giving authority back to the committee to make adjustments based on the test drive, something like that. I think we can.
Yeah, I think that sounds really excellent. And thank you, Deborah, for your comments. I definitely understand that it's an improvement and that we want to keep moving forward on the process. I just wanted to make sure I had a clear understanding of how we could make what I think are easily achieved improvements before we go ahead and implement it for this coming year. And it sounds like there's a proposal of using the test drive and calibration and asking the commission to grant the committee the ability to make those adjustments this December, assuming we can all get together, and that's a good timeline. I'm also volunteering to help out there, just to add my name to the list. Thank you.
And would it just be permission to make adjustments to the weightings of each category? Is that what you're envisioning?
I think so.
Okay.
I was also thinking it might be a basis for coming up with illustrations of, you know, what might exceed expectations or meet expectations, something like that.
To me, that is sort of the most difficult part of this evaluation, because I don't really think we've ever looked at these applications. I know I haven't necessarily looked at them from that perspective, whether one program sort of is exceptional versus another that meets the expectations. If the money was there, we were going to give each program the money, regardless of how they sort of showed up on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be great if we could sort of get on the same page as to, between those two categories of rating, what does that mean? So, for example, on picking up where Chris mentioned, you know, the category of court involvement, you know, I think sort of intuitively, we want to make sure that when a court requests that a program be put in place, that we get that program funded. Okay, that's a good example of something that maybe exceeds expectations. On the other hand, we have really good programs where the court's involvement has been minimal. They provided space, for example, or something along those lines. So, yeah, right now in the abstract, I'm just having a hard time seeing how these are going to apply. I would really like to go through some exercise of.
And Bonnie had a question on this topic, asking if there was a sense of what the committee would consider to be innovative, for example.
Had some ideas.
Yeah, you know, when I made that
innovative.
suggestion, my thought was something that was truly innovative, that, you know, either hadn't been done before, or it's a significant innovation on something that has been done. I don't mean innovative in the sense that it's never been done in that particular county. That's not, to me, that's not innovative. But something, you know, kind of stands out as new. That's what I had in my mind. I don't know what anybody else thought, but when I made that suggestion, that based on what Chris had said earlier in the meeting, that was kind of what I thought.
My take on that, Justice Murray, is that, again, this is it's a scale. So innovation can be something, I guess I would say that something new to a county that's been piloted elsewhere would be innovative for that county, but not necessarily innovative at the highest level. But like community court, I'm not sure where that had been done successfully and in partnership. And so to me, like, that would be an example of an innovation. You know, I think over the years, we've sort of seen several innovations, and some of them, me, that just, you know, without sort of thinking about the breadth of those examples, there have been, like, for example, domestic violence programs that I can recall reviewing, in which they have begun to offer services in new languages with outreach in specific communities. They've set up clinic type locations, which are at or near the courthouse, but in new places, with the specific intent of meeting communities where they are. So things like that, I think, are innovative. And I'm sure, boy, Dan, I mean, I imagine you could put together a list of, you know, half a dozen over the many years that would be sort of.
Yeah, but it's so tricky because I don't think it's an even playing field. How do you compare a court that's asking for its very first ever partnership project, but doesn't really know what it's doing and isn't, maybe as engaged as some of the others, versus one that's got a lot of experience and it just sort of par for the course and we're going to do another one. So, run them through the system. I don't know how to compare these. And when you get right down to it, we will be as objective as we can be, but it's going to be subjective at the bottom. We have to decide what we think is important and how it fits in this rubric. So I'm really hesitant to come up with suggestions. People are going to use those as directions, like this is what they want us to do, and it may not be the right thing for their courthouse.
Yeah, but Dan, I guess sorry, Justice Murray, I just to say, I don't think, I didn't interpret the question as what we would suggest somebody does to innovate, just what is an example of an innovation. I mean, for example,
for our own evaluative purposes.
Yeah, and the flash care was addressing a specific need. That was an innovation in the sense that they said, hey, we've got this giant backlog. We're going to partner with this LSO, and we're going to basically bang through like ancient cases, and that was a problem in terms of backlog in San Francisco County that didn't exist in YOLO or in, Alpine. So, I mean, I do think innovation will be specific to a specific court, and I don't think it's going to look a certain way, but I do like the idea of rewarding people, not just running it back. Because the issue that we've confronted in this committee over the years has been, well, they tied a pink ribbon around it instead of a red one. It's the same program, they gave it a new title. I mean, it's a need, like there's nothing wrong with the program to begin with, but it's like, it's not new. And so I do think like encouraging innovative thinking is, at least I am supportive of that.
I do think it's easier to talk about that in terms of innovation than in terms of court engagement. And if it would be helpful, I can look back at, the last 7 to 10 years and see what seemed to be, noteworthy to me.
Honestly, I think that would be helpful because I just think for our own internal purposes of these evaluations, we sort of need to be on the same page in some of these categories, including innovation. Can I ask about the 20-point category, the funding priorities?
Sure.
And I also just want to be mindful of time. I know that we've been this for an hour.
And I just wanted to ask about the treatment of 5-year plus rural programs in this sort of gradation of who gets higher points. I'm not clear what the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is on the right-hand column. And I'm also a bit concerned that we would be giving brand new projects, say in a community with lots of resources, a priority over a rural project that's been in existence for a while.
So that's how the priorities.
Resources, and I, we've never written it down like this, where rural projects don't get the same priority. I guess I'm a bit concerned about that. And if I was in one of those rural projects, I think I'd be concerned about that as well.
So Justice Murray, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that is to allow commissioners to have discretion in assigning points. So if it's, for example, an older project in a rural community that's really providing a service and filling a need, you could give it 5 points versus, a new project in an urban county that maybe has a lot of other services, you could give that 1 point. That's to allow for discretion. And then as things are laid, as the policies are laid
How
out.
does that translate to the 4 points then? To the ×4 at the bottom in the column?
So that's just the weighting for it, for that category. So you could give it 5 points and it'd be weighted 4 times. So you'd get, it'd be 20 points is the total, is the max. Versus if you gave it 1, only 4 points would be the max. And the policies that are in the rubric, I just want to clarify that those are all policies that the commission approved for partnership grants. We did not change, Crystal did not change any of the language of the policies. We just translated them into the rubric because, as you know, the board is who can change policies for us. And so we didn't want, while we're test driving everything, we didn't want to elevate it to the board yet. We wanted to do it along with codification.
Okay.
So in our current written policies, we have it set forth in this sort of hierarchy of.
Yes. That's the way it's set forth. But of course, this committee has discretion. These are discretionary grants. And so
Well, I guess I've always just focused on the discretionary part of it, not what's written down.
Just for timing for those who can volunteer, since the turnaround time for the 15th is tight, I think what we would want maybe is to get the feedback and test driving done by mid-December. Just be mindful of the upcoming holidays and the release of the application. So it'd be 2 weeks instead of the 1 week. Just to confirm, Eric, Will, and Justice Mary, you're able to participate for this testing with the extension of that timing?
No, I already had a bunch of things on my plate for this month. Okay. I didn't see this coming.
Crystal, I can participate.
Somebody just called me yesterday about doing an extra project. So.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah. I think it'd be a good balance with the newer committee members as well as those who've been who are familiar with these. So thank you, Deborah, for volunteering. I know we're behind. So I believe the motion that we wanted to propose was that the committee recommend approval, and we'll carry over that in concept approach to the commission at its December 15 meeting. But again, there'll be some flexibility to make adjustments to the weighting of the rubric once we get the test driving in place.
So I'll make the motion, and then I have to jump off after the vote.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, great. Benrelli?
Yes.
Bartleson? Bishelli?
No.
Iskin?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Let's see, and I believe that was the last one before adjournment, Christina.
Crystal, can you send me the materials? It may be that I have an opportunity to glance at it without.
Yeah, you're welcome to send me any comments as well outside of the testing, and we can take that in consideration.
Why don't you send them to everybody, and anybody who is able to work on it, we will, because I think there was a lot of interest.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything further we need to discuss? 4 minutes overtime. Well, thank you, everybody. So we'll adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Where's the button? Thanks all.
Thanks, Will. So Kim, I think we can stop recording.